So data privacy, it's like everywhere these days, right?
Yeah, it's been impossible to ignore.
And for good reason, which is why today we're doing a deep dive on a case coming out of the EU that has major implications for, well, all of us who use the internet.
Huge implications, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Because this case isn't just about some dry legal mumbo jumbo. It's about the future of our data, our privacy. I mean, are we really in control of our information online, or are we, like, unwittingly handing over the keys to the kingdom?
Right. I mean, we're talking about companies like Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook, right?
Right.
And the incredible amounts of data they collect on us.
Exactly. So to help us untangle all of this, I've got an expert in all things data privacy with me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So let's start with the spark that ignited this whole thing. Max Schrems. Tell me about this guy. He's kind of a big deal in the privacy world, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's been fighting the good fight for years. This isn't even his first rodeo taking on Meta, by the way.
Really? So what exactly did Meta do this time to land back in the hot seat?
So we all know that Facebook, or Meta as they like to be called these days, collects a ton of data on us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's no secret. Like what we click on, what we like, who we follow. It's kind of creepy if you think about it too much.
Oh, absolutely. And this case goes even further, highlighting how Meta uses that data, including, get this, sensitive information like inferring a user's sexual orientation to then target them with ads.
Wow. Okay, so they're not just tracking what we do on Facebook, but they're using it to build these, like, incredibly detailed profiles on us.
Yeah, and then using those profiles for profit.
Hmm.
This is where the European Court of Justice, the ECJ, stepped in and said, nope, not okay.
So the ECJ basically delivered a smackdown, and at the heart of this ruling is this principle called data minimization, which I have to admit sounds a bit, well, technical. Can you break it down for us?
Totally. Think of it this way. Data minimization basically means companies can't just be these data hoarders vacuuming up every single bit of information about us just because they have the technical ability to do so.
Makes sense. Like, I don't need Facebook knowing what I ate for breakfast just because I happen to be scrolling through my feed at the time.
Exactly. So the ECJ is essentially saying that companies need to be able to justify why they need each piece of data and that it has to be directly related to a specific purpose.
So, for example, if I'm using Facebook to, I don't know, connect with friends and family, they don't need access to my browsing history on completely unrelated websites.
Okay, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But this gets a little tricky because, I mean, some people might argue that using data for targeted ads isn't all bad, right? Like, I'd much rather see ads for, say, hiking boots if I'm an outdoorsy person than, like, ads for something I have zero interest in.
Sure, and that's where this whole debate gets really interesting. Because the ECJ ruling goes beyond just saying you can't collect data. It also really dives into this idea of what information is truly fair game, even if it's publicly available.
Okay, so unpack that a bit. What do you mean?
Well, let's say you share a picture of yourself at a pride parade. That's awesome. You're being open about who you are. But does that give a company like Meta the right to then use your other data, like your browsing history, to infer even more about your sexual orientation and then potentially use that information against you?
That's kind of a scary thought. It's like saying just because you share one aspect of yourself publicly doesn't mean you've given up your right to privacy in all areas of your life.
Exactly, and that's a really crucial distinction the ECJ made.
So this ruling isn't just about data collection itself, it's about the ethical implications of how that data is used.
100%.
It sounds like this could seriously shake things up for social media companies and how they operate. I mean, if they can't just gobble up all of our data, what does that mean for their business models, many of which rely on this kind of data aggregation?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how this unfolds. One likely outcome is we might see fewer targeted ads, or at the very least, companies will need to be much, much more transparent about how they're using data to target us.
So, like, no more hiding behind vague terms and conditions that nobody reads. They'd actually have to be upfront about what they're doing with our information.
Exactly. It really puts the emphasis on what's called informed consent.
Which is kind of ironic considering most of us just click agree without a second thought, because who has time to read through pages and pages of legal jargon, right?
It's true. But this ruling could really force a shift in how we approach data privacy online. Imagine a world where you actually understood what you were agreeing to, where companies were upfront about their practices and gave you real, meaningful control over your information.
That's a world I want to live in. But realistically, will this one ruling in the EU actually change things globally? I mean, the internet is vast, right? And what about companies based in other countries with different regulations?
That's the million-dollar question. Will this decision be a catalyst for similar regulations around the world? Or will we see a fragmentation of data privacy laws with different rules and regulations in different places? And what does that mean for users? It's going to be fascinating to see how this all unfolds.
Yeah, so much to think about. It seems like this case is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the future of data privacy and who has the power in this digital age. Big thanks to you for helping us break all of this down.
My pleasure. Let's see where we are in a year or two.
For sure. And to our listeners, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all of this? What does true data ownership look like to you? Hit us up on social media and let us know. Until next time, keep it locked right here for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world.